got something valuable, sooner or later someone will probably try and steal it, and a good alarm can stop them. I don't think many of us have diamonds that big, but a lot of us do have one of these video recorders. They're extremely popular. Over half the burglaries last year involved one. But fortunately, there's now an alarm system designed just for video recorders. It's shaped like an ordinary cassette. You switch it on with a key and you just slot it in the normal way. Now your video is a lot safer because inside there is a battery, an alarm, and this mercury tilt switch that sets the alarm off. Basically, it's a container nearly full of mercury. The top wide to the battery and the bottom to the bell. If it's moved, the mercury touching the top and bottom of the container will complete the circuit, and that will trigger the alarm. And it keeps going until it's switched off. I wonder if it's actually as noisy as that in the VCR. Let's try. Certainly is. I think that would definitely frighten even the deafest burglar. Oh, and there's a small bonus. If you lock this alarm into your video, your children, or even the burglar, can't watch video nasties while you're out.
Fast cars are so vulgar, aren't they? This could beat them anyway. And it will, you'll see. This isn't a fast car, it's a fast plane. It's a microlight, in fact. Lots of microlights around. Whoops. There'll probably be a lot more microlights around if only their supporters could overcome the understandable prejudice that some people have that microlights are unsafe. Well, the designer of this microlight has attempted to overcome that prejudice by pulling together lots of different safety features that you might find on other microlights, but rarely all on the same plane. Take the wings. Actually, while the lads are fixing these wings on, perhaps you ought to have a look at a demonstration rig of one of these wings. You've got straight aluminium wing struts instead of wires, and this increases the strength of the microlight wing by some 20%. Now, as an unscientific but effective representation of how much extra weight the wing can carry, a business executive could take his secretary, a desk and typewriter on the wing without the whole lot collapsing. I wouldn't recommend anyone flew like that.
Nor would I recommend anyone deliberately force an aircraft up into a stall, but that's exactly what this pilot's about to do. You see, the main wing has been specially shaped to prevent a stall. Instead of falling backwards as it loses speed, the wings on this one tip it forward, and the pilot regains control. But however safe the microlight is, would a business executive ever seriously choose one of those to replace his sports car? Well, 85 miles an hour in the air might not quite match some cars' maximum speed, but then cars can't always follow the straightest route. So, the top businessman of the future might soon be the microlight executive racing to clinch that all-important deal ahead of the competition.
Mind you, his car isn't bad, is it? Now, this picture of me is coming to you courtesy of the very latest in video cameras. Not this camera here, but this one up here. It's really tiny, isn't it? But what makes it so revolutionary is the way that it actually makes the picture. Because since the very first days of television, all cameras have used a tube like this. The light enters here and is then converted into an electrical signal. A colour camera, like the ones that we use in this studio, has got 3 of these tubes inside. There. You can just see one of them sticking out here. And one picks up red light, one picks up blue, and one green. Give them a good stir and you get a colour picture. But this new camera doesn't have a tube. Instead, it uses a special form of microchip. And you can even get a smaller version here, ideal for industrial use, but you can only shoot black and white. Now this will cope with all sorts of temperatures, with magnetic fields and even shock. And it means that the cameras can boldly go where no camera has been before, to places like furnaces and the undercarriages of jumbo jets. Now, another advantage they have is of being able to shoot from a brightly lit exterior to a dull interior, or, as you can see here, I can move around the studio. Now there's a lit area over there, and as we come round here, past the crew, we come into a much darker area, but as you can tell, there's no problem getting those pictures. You can practically see in the dark, which of course is great for shooting at night. But how does that chip work? Well, if you take a closer look at the surface, you can see that it's covered in tiny squares, and each one of those squares is responsible for sensing the intensity of either red, green or blue light, which comes from a minute section of the total picture. Now this is a section through the chip. Light falls on the upper section, the sensor. This then feeds a charge down to the lower part of the section, a kind of storage place, and from there it's transported along the bottom and out of the chip to a processor which builds up a final picture. And the whole process is repeated 60 times each second. And now we come to the final test, because if we try to point this studio camera at a very bright light, just watch what happens. Now the tubes are going to be absolutely destroyed. Now, what you'll see, or what I hope you'll see, as I pan the camera around the studio, is there. Can you see that there's a dark speck? Let's move it into this light area. There, can you see that speck? Now that has been burnt onto the surface of the tube, and they're expensive and they'll now need replacing. So, let's just see how our new camera stands up to that test. Right, well, I'll just bring this in. There. Now I think you can actually see the filaments, so I'm giving it a good try here. And now I'll move it around the studio. There. I think you can clearly see that no damage has been done. You can get as close as you want to the subject. But now, here's Judith with a subject I certainly wouldn't normally fancy getting all that close to.
Whatever our neuroses about going to the dentist, few of us need to arrive this way, anaesthetised on a stretcher. But with teeth like these, nobody's taking any chances. After the drilling will come the filling, and with the more touchy patients particularly, dentists always hope that filling will be strong enough to last a lifetime, while their customers hope it won't spoil the perfection of their smile. But the perfect filling, both strong and white, has been hard to find. Up till now, all filling materials have been something of a compromise. The one we know best, amalgam, takes hours to harden, so there's always the danger the filling will get damaged before it sets. And of course, you can, if you're unlucky, end up with a mouthful of very unattractive silvery lumps. Composite fillings look much better. They're usually white. But the trouble with these is that they start to harden as soon as the two chemicals are mixed, which means they're difficult to use on large holes that need a lot of shaping. And also, air gets incorporated into the filling when it's mixed, weakening the structure, so that it's unsuitable for those back teeth, which obviously need a very hard surface to cope with all the biting and grinding that we do. But at last, all the ideal properties have been combined into one substance. And this is it, the filling of the future. There it is. Now it's already mixed, so air can't weaken its structure. And it's soft enough to be able to be worked just like putty. And it will stay just as soft as this until the dentist wants it to harden. So you can spend as much time as you like perfecting your work. And all you need to harden that filling is this. A very special blue light. That filling will be rock hard in less than a minute. It contains two different substances, a filler, which is made from tiny particles of glass, and a liquid resin, which hardens when it's exposed to the blue light. At first, the molecules of resin are naturally separate. They're made up of small units, each connected by two chemical bonds, and they're able to move around freely, so the mixture stays soft. But when the blue light is shone onto the molecules, it provides the energy needed to break the double bonds, producing lots of spare single bonds. These new single bonds quickly join the molecules together, forming a large, rigid complex that can't move. So the filling sets hard. Now, light hardening resins have been used before on front teeth, but because they have a lot of gaps between all the glass particles, the resins are too weak for back teeth. So for the new resin, glass particles of 3 different sizes were very carefully selected. And because of the different sizes, all the gaps are filled up. So you end up with far more glass in the filling, making it very, very much tougher. Now we've actually got the filling that I've just made here. You can hear, even if you can't see, that that now is very hard. And to test its strength actually in the mouth, scientists have developed a new technique using lasers. First of all, they make an exact copy of the teeth plus their fillings. Then they coat that with gold, because that reflects light well. A laser beam is shone onto the teeth. The gold reflects the laser light so that a clear photograph can be taken. And the result is an image of the filling, got one here, with a series of fine contour lines superimposed on it. Now, if there's any wear at all, those contour lines change and they don't match up properly. So what they do is they take one picture. This was taken just after the filling was put in. They take one later. This one was taken 2 years later, and they see if there's been any change in the contour lines. And I'm sure you'll agree there that they match up perfectly, which means there's no sign of wear on that particular filling. So, very soon, we should all benefit from big, white smiles.
For John Marcello, the roping of cattle out here in Arizona is strictly for sport, and it's a reminder of the way things used to be done out in the old Wild West. But of course, since the days when the cowboys rode the open ranges, farming methods have changed dramatically.
These days, most of America's cattle are confined within huge, highly mechanized feedlots, like this one near Phoenix. On this one site, 18,000 head of cattle are fed a carefully controlled diet for just as long as it takes to ensure that they each become a profitable supplier of the country's traditional staple diet. It's a costly business, and for the cattlemen to make a good profit, they must produce best quality beef with just the right combination of lean meat and fat. That means selecting each animal for slaughter at the critical time of maturity, after the lean bodybuilding is complete and before it lays down too much fat. However, gauging that time precisely is difficult. Even the animal's age is only a rough guide because different sized cattle mature at different rates. Well, science may soon come to the aid of these cattlemen who, up to now, have relied on a keen eye and a lifetime's experience to make their decisions. The new approach to the problem is being followed by researchers from the University of Arizona. Out of the saddle, John Marcello takes on a very different role as a biochemist. His research team at Tucson is now taking a detailed look not at the fat itself, but at the blood for clues to that crucial time of maturity. They're paying special attention to microscopic particles called lipoproteins.
That blood sample contains millions of them. They're particles which, quite literally, pick up the fat like this and transport it around the body. In fact, those particles are made up of various proteins which join up to enclose the fat. And it's the way those protein molecules change as the animal reaches maturity that's now being studied.
But there are hundreds of different particles in the blood, and they knew they needed to home in on just one group of a particular size contained in this top layer of plasma. So to try to isolate that group, the plasma is purified and filtered through a column which acts like a sieve, producing a succession of graded samples, each containing a particular size of particle. Now that they can lay their hands on the size they've been looking for, they can set about a closer examination. An electric current can separate out the different protein molecules that make up each particle. And in this tube, each molecule is seen as a separate band of color. It's thought the rather faint bar on the left might hold the key, because the amount of this one molecule, E-apoprotein, seems to increase markedly just as the animal reaches maturity.
But if that turns out to be true, then it could lead to a simple blood test which will allow these cattlemen to know that they're producing animals with exactly the right balance between lean and fat meat. But that's still a long way off.
In the meantime, the fate of these cattle will continue to depend on the more traditional skills of the cowboy.
Now, bad news for pigeons, and what could be very bad news for us, because we're both affected by the Earth's magnetic field, and it may be about to change. You can tell where magnetic north is by using a compass. The needle lines itself up with the imaginary lines of force, and they all pass through magnetic north. Now, in fact, magnetic north shifts slightly from year to year. At the moment, it's about 400 miles away from the geographic North Pole. But geologist Professor Shobir Banerjee of Minnesota University has evidence that suggests there'll be a much more dramatic shift within the next few thousand years. A total reversal of north and south poles. North becomes south. Well, it's not such a crazy idea as it might seem. There's already been several reversals in the distant past, and we know that because geologists have analysed core samples from very old rocks. They looked at the alignment of magnetic particles in those rocks to find out whether the polarity at a particular time was normal or reversed. Going back from the present, this graph shows that reversals have been occurring at intervals ranging from 250,000 to 1 million years. Those are just the last 4 reversals. The latest was 700,000 years ago, so we're due, sooner or later, for another one. Professor Banerjee says it could be sooner because of his findings, using a new technique to measure accurately relatively recent changes in the strength of our magnetic field. He analysed the magnetic particles in the muddy sediments from lake beds at Minnesota. Looking at the last 4,000 years up to the present day, he claims that no matter what age of sediment he tried, when he worked out its field strength, he discovered over that time there's been a steady weakening of the Earth's magnetic field. In fact, it's apparently dropped by 50%. Now, other geologists agree that on past experience, a drop like that could well lead to a reversal. But why should the poles reverse? Well, one theory blames the random motion of the Earth's molten core. As liquids flow within the core, they produce magnetic fields. And the net effect of all the different movements is a very weak overall field, producing our north and south poles. But because all those movements inside the Earth are randomly changing in speed and direction, there's no reason why the overall effect shouldn't change, even to the extent of reversing completely. So what's the problem if the only difference is your compass points south instead of north? Well, the worry is the effect on the Earth while it actually goes through a reversal. And when I tell you it's been suggested that some prehistoric extinctions have happened during reversals, you'll be prepared for the worst. Normally, the magnetic field forms an envelope around the Earth,
deflecting high-energy radiation from the sun. But if the field gets weaker, as it would during a polarity reversal, some of that radiation won't be deflected around the Earth, it'll hit the Earth's atmosphere. One effect is that the northern lights, usually restricted to the poles, could extend all over the world. Much more serious, though, is the likely effect on our weather. The energy from the radiation will heat up the atmosphere, causing high winds, torrential rain, and unbearable temperatures. What's more, any radiation reaching the Earth's surface will have a direct effect on our cells. It's known to be harmful to the skin and could lead to a marked increase in the number of cancers. Bearing in mind these major risks, we might be forgiven for not worrying about the other effect, several hundred years of crazy compasses which won't know which way to point. That's something which could bother other animals much more than us. Now, we'd probably be able to find other ways of working out where we are, but for lots of other creatures, like these homing pigeons, that's not always possible. They depend for their sense of direction partly on tiny particles in their heads which line up with the magnetic field. And if the field changes, there's a good chance they get lost, as would lots of other animals. They just keep going in the wrong direction until they drop. Now, before we get too carried away with this notion of extinction, remember that so far Professor Banerjee has only measured one local drop in the local magnetic field in Minnesota. And although other drops have been recorded in Greece and in China, they may just be short-term drops. They may go back to where they started. But if this trend continues to become a total reversal, well, we've got one consolation. It won't happen within the next few thousand years. And that'll be sometime after these guys get home tonight.
Meanwhile, on a reservoir in sun-drenched Slough, we're going to try a little experiment. Windsurfing comes to the Olympics for the first time this year, which should give the sport a bit of a lift. But not as big a lift as this device should. It comes from Germany, and it's a prototype hydrofoil for windsurfers. You simply slot it into place instead of the normal dagger board, and it'll fit most windsurfing boards without the need for any modification. The idea is that the foils, which are shaped just like the wing of a plane, will fly along under the water and then lift the board up above the surface where it should literally fly. Whether that makes it go any faster or not remains to be seen. But to give it a fair trial, here's Nick Tillett, our British hope for the Olympics.
There's an amusing and entertaining selection of items from tomorrow's world in this BBC book. Tomorrow's World Today is one of the latest books from BBC Publications, and it's available, as always, from booksellers.